Welcome and thanks for joining us for another episode of Code Girls on Air, a podcast exploring all things technology, female leadership, careers, education, and topics within the nonprofit sector. On this episode, we interviewed Lindy Benton Moreno, who is the founder and current executive board chair at Vyne. Join Lindy and me to hear more of her story. Welcome, Lindy. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Do you think you could start by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your background and your career?
That takes more than a second, but I will tell you about my background and career because it's been very different over the years.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear.
And I am Lindy, and it was Benton Moreno, so most of my business life was Benton. And I started out, I'm a graduate of Florida State University and graduated with a multi-handicap deaf-blind education.
Wow.
Minor in child psych. So that's where it started.
Oh, okay.
I went to teach, and I was starting to teach and realized that one day I saw this woman who came to the school district, and she was selling disc and tapes for mainframes. And I got a chance to speak to her and learned about things called computers. And this would have been in the late 70s, early 80s.
Great.
And so I drove that day down to the University of South Florida because I was teaching in the Tampa area in Florida. And that was the college that was closest. And
Gotcha.
I asked to get into computer science. And remember, this is early 80s, so I was asked to get into the computer science and learn how to use those things called computers. And basically, I was told I was a female. And it was a 2-year wait. And I went, I'm not waiting 2 years.
Yeah, to even enter the program was waiting 2 years.
And so they agreed to give me a PhD in statistics, which, by the way, I didn't love.
Yeah.
Statistics.
Yeah.
And
Not your favorite?
not my favorite. And I minored in computers, which is what I wanted.
Okay.
And I learned how to code in a room very much like you have across the hall here. Looked exactly the same. And we worked on, COBOL program,
Okay.
COBOL time.
Okay.
And so it was a journey. And then once I did that, I physically ran into him. What I did not know it, but then was a CEO of a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, which is now merged enough to be part of Hewlett-Packard. So I worked for that company. I got recruited and worked for as one of the only females because there weren't that many, to be
Right.
honest.
Yeah.
And they started these desktop computer things, and they thought they would replace typewriters, which we all know in the end, it replaced everything.
Everything.
Desktop, right? So, and I ended up working for them for 13 years, and then got recruited and worked in the software for healthcare for 12 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how did that transition happen?
I got recruited out of there.
Oh,
So,
gotcha.
in the hardware world, I never thought about me competing against my counterparts who were all males, pretty much. It's me competing against me.
Yeah.
I competed against me, and my goals were always just the next thing. And so I had the hardware, I wanted the software. And then 16 years ago, I acquired a small company and founded the medical side of what was a dental side and have grown it over the last 16 years.
Wow.
So that's a short story of my journey.
Yeah. No, so you started in education and then you kind of made the shift into tech. What kind of was the turning point in that? What made you want to go to that field?
I realized early on that these things called computers could potentially help the kids I was teaching. So the kids I was teaching had disabilities, maybe in their visual, hearing, physical, but they didn't have disabilities in their heads. They were just little normal kids trying to make it through. And the way the school system was set up at that time was testing them for, when they would test, they couldn't always take the test.
Right.
And so they were being put in classrooms that weren't advantageous to them learning. And so I saw these computers and thought, I wonder if I could develop something to help them do that.
And were they receiving any aid prior to that? Like, were they able to take the test orally or in a different way? Or
It was all orally.
Okay.
I mean, no school had any computer because they almost didn't exist unless you had a mainframe.
Right. In the 80s.
And I say school, I mean like elementary.
Right. Littler kids. So what surprised you most when you first started out in tech?
the lack of women. I'll tell you that. I was the only one in a lot of different parts of my life.
Yeah.
And I met this woman once, and if you don't know her, you should. And it's Grace Hopper. And Grace, back in the 1940s, was in the Navy. In fact, she was an admiral in the Navy. And she was not allowed to be in the Navy when World War II started. So she had to go to the reserves. And as part of the reserves, she joined this team where she is credited for inventing, I guess, if you will, COBOL. And interestingly, she also invented the word bug in computers, which in her mind was a real bug.
Right.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
It was a moth.
It was a literal bug in the...
A literal bug. And so that term's still stuck today. And she was this... And I remember one time her telling me, and I would have been in my probably late 20s, and she said, remember one thing, a goal, and it's really important. So a goal is not what you're going to do. Like if you have a goal today of going to college, that's not a goal. That's a journey to get you to your goal. So if your goal is to own a company where you want to build a system that does X, and it's your interest, right? It's what you guys are doing now when you're thinking about what you're going to develop. Then every decision you make up until that point becomes easy.
Right.
What are you going to major in? What college are you going to go to? Who has the best engineering programs? If that's what what you want to do, and work towards that goal, which is what I think women don't do as well as their counterparts.
I agree. So can you talk about some of the challenges you faced being the only woman in the field and how you kind of overcame those?
So first, I never saw them as challenges. I just saw them as walls. And if there's a wall in front of you, you have choices. You can take a lawn chair out and sit there and stare at it, hope something changes. You can climb over it, you can go around it, or you can dig under it. And I always got my shovel out. Look, when you dig under it, it's harder.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a path you chose. It might not be the best path because you could have just gone around it. But I always, just kept that shovel going and dug.
Yeah.
And so I think some of the challenges was up against the brick walls of just being accepted as a woman in a very, very strong male field.
Right, and especially in the early days of
80s.
Yeah,
absolutely. You saw I didn't see anybody like me, so I was the one everybody was looking at, and so that's a hard thing to do when you don't know what you're doing. But I think one of the things I was good at was if you move forward, like if you're just going to sit there and think about it, you're going nowhere.
Right.
So I knew how to make a decision, right or wrong. And I knew if that was going down the wrong path, then I knew how to adjust. And so if I was going left and I needed to go right, then I moved over right. And the challenges were certainly pay at the time. It was getting acknowledged. And so I worked harder, longer. And I felt like I have to. And I think women still feel like that today. I do. And it's probably not true, but the company I built, I have become a very, very strong mentor for women, and have grown probably through the hard knock school. I don't give them a whole lot of breaks, and really challenge them to think about how they're working through their lives and what they want to do. So, and that's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of.
Yeah. So you talked about a little bit overcoming these obstacles. What's kind of a strength you think somebody would need to be able to overcome those in your field?
There's only one thing, and that's to have your goal. I had a goal, and I absolutely wanted to run a company one day. And so every decision I made was being successful at one and then moving to the other. I knew I had to have certain things in my background I knew how to. I had to know, technology and engineering and sales and marketing and,
Yeah, you had to wear all the hats.
I did, and so I started taking jobs that allowed me to wear those hats for a while. So I had all the experience I needed. And as a CEO, you don't need to be a master of all that.
Yeah,
I would say you need to be a master of a couple of them, but understand the role.
Yeah.
Understand what somebody does in that role. And if you do, you'll be successful. So every decision I made, and trust me, I didn't have a goal set out until way into my 30s. But at least then I learned to make a goal and just drive toward it. Just drive toward your end game. And I think if you set a goal that's too short term, you get there. And then
what's next?
What's next? You have to reset goals set it way out there. And then those are sub goals, so getting there. And a lot of the obstacles I overcame were certainly fighting for pay, fighting for, just equality. I didn't want to be better. I just wanted the equal.
Same, yeah.
And there were many, 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 many cases where I was back in the day when there was a lot of things going on that today we just would be unacceptable.
Yeah.
In your world, but in my world it was normal.
Yeah. And so do you feel like you ever achieved that level of equality before you started your own company?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't think of it as equality. I just think of it as I achieved my goals.
Okay.
And what I wanted to do, because if you pay attention to what somebody else is doing, male or female, if you pay attention to that, you're not going to get to your goals. You're going to get to their goals, or help them or hurt them.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do. I wasn't going to hurt them.
Right.
So I just kept my head down and stayed focused on my goals. And I never really thought about equality. But I can tell you, I don't know that there was a time. There were specific instances, but there wasn't a period in my life where I'd say I felt like hard work didn't make me equal, no matter who I was competing against. And I'm highly competitive, as you can probably imagine. I was a swimmer growing up, so I learned how to compete against me.
Yeah.
And so I just kept my head down and
work towards your goal.
And work to my goal.
So what was kind of the turning point that made you take the leap to start your own company at that moment?
The opportunity.
The opportunity.
I was given the opportunity. And so I think one of the things that I have done really well along the way is I have always had mentors. And I'll seek them out. I'll find them. I will nurture that relationship. So starting now, you find people in your life and you begin to build what we call a Rolodex. I guess you would call it your address book or something.
Yeah.
But I literally had a Rolodex where I would put cards in. And
like business cards or like
business cards. I tape them onto one of those little white cards and stick it on the little round thing that we used to call. And I worked hard with my network. And when I graduated college and I went to go teach, during that time I started, when I was going to computer science, just meeting all the people I could, that when I got out of the stat PhD, which by the way, I went to dissertate, and that's when I got hired by Digital.
Oh, gotcha.
And never finished the dissertation. Everybody always told me, you need to go back and do that, but I never saw a need for that because I had what I needed.
Right. Yeah. Right. You got what you...
I had what I needed. And so I would tell you that just by going with all my mentors, by the time I got to running the company, it was a mentor who helped me get into that role.
Wow.
And a lot of learning. I have to tell
right.
you, what
was the best advice a mentor gave you when you were starting out that specifically?
She really helped me understand that when you enter a business world where you're running a company, that you need to focus on the company and not the emotions or I was really into the people part of it, which is what you should always be.
Right.
But I also had to do what was best for the company that I was running, because you have investors, you have people who are investing in you, and so you have to make sure that you are protecting their money. You're like you're like their bank.
Yeah. Really though.
So I have the money, and now I'm going to make sure I invest it wisely, that I use it wisely, and my decisions need to be made for two factors. One is the employees, and the other is is this moving the company forward? And if there's a yes, then you go. So, because you don't really want to be impactful to either side.
Right.
For sure.
So can we kind of shift gears now and talk about like what a day in your life looks like now, and just kind of as a business owner, what was your day-to-day schedule?
The business owner piece, when I was CEO and founder of the company, a lot of travel. I would tell you that you need to either have a very good partner by your side if you're going to go off and do the family home thing. Yeah. You have to, because if you're going to be on the road that much, somebody has to be
home.
Just have more of a career that's home based, I would say, than and so or not have any of the home thing, right? So you have choices to make. I would tell you, if you see somebody and you think they have it all, they don't. Because it's very hard to be on the road day after day and have to worry about child care.
Yeah.
It's hard enough with dog care.
It really is. Yeah.
It's like, what do I do with the dogs when I'm leaving for a day? So it's very, very difficult. And you will not be successful at anything unless you make that choice. And I've told, unfortunately, a lot of women that, and they've made shifts in their careers. And it's certainly a noble thing to choose. I'd rather stay home with my family for a while and maybe do it later.
Right.
And while you're home with your family, do something like continue your, growing your mentors, or continue to take a class online. You can do all that.
Yeah, work towards your
and
goals.
then back when you're ready. But it is a hard choice. And when you decide to make it, that's kind of how I thought about it in the end, and that's how I move forward with it. So I really worked a lot, and 2 years ago made the good decision to allow one of my presidents to become CEO of the company, and I rolled off to board chair. And so a day in life is I go to some investor conferences.
Okay.
I keep touch with, and kind of help mentor where he doesn't really need it anymore, but when he does, I'm a sounding board for him, and just stay involved on the board. And I've since also joined National Philanthropic Trust Board.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a good way to give back. And I'm also have been 6 years on the Florida State University Academic Board, the alumni board. So I keep busy doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I volunteer in the community. I try to volunteer. I'd like to do more. I don't do enough of that. And I think that's probably what I'll start
putting your time into
forward.
And so do you still travel very much, or not as much now? Just
once a month.
Board. Oh, okay.
I think once a month, where it was every day.
Yeah.
I'm certainly a million miler on all airlines. So, and out of here, as you know,
well, everything's far away from here.
Yeah. So it's Salt Lake or Denver, and then wherever else you're going.
Right.
So
yeah.
Lucky for me, there's an office in Salt Lake. We have an office in Salt Lake, so
that's an easy
landing there is easy.
Yeah.
But it's I've been used to it. I was used to it. So, but it became my day-to-day activity, and it's why I made the decision that let somebody else younger who has different thoughts.
Yeah.
Because I'd been 16 years at the company, so I think having somebody come up and do that.
Fresh eyes, yeah.
Fresh eyes.
So what was your favorite part when you were CEO?
The people, 100%. Growing the people, watching. And in my case, I had 16 executives, of which 12 were women. And I had grown them from different parts of the organization. Brought them with me when I came, and gave them the tools to grow. So they worked very hard to do that, and they have become, and watching them be successful, what they were doing is the most rewarding thing, because when we sold the company a few times, when we recapped it or sold it, they got rewarded for that. And so it was life-changing for them.
Yeah.
And for me to watch that is just that I could still, get teary-eyed watching that kind of thing.
Wow.
So that's what I would tell you, growing the people. And I'm not saying there weren't any, there were also the same with the men I had with growing. But I am a woman, so therefore I understand a little bit more about how it feels.
Yeah, what they're going through specifically.
So I related a little better. But
no, that makes sense. Especially from a mentor's perspective.
Correct.
And sorry, can we backtrack? How did you handle your family life with all the travel? What did you end up choosing? Or how did you work that out?
I did a bad job at it.
Oh.
The family life, I did. So it wasn't, that's why I tell you, I know of the sacrifices. I know that, I had a few failed attempts until I ran into my current husband and my only husband from here on out. But it's who was highly supportive, starting 22 years ago, had my back at every turn. And that's kind of how I did it. So I did fail in that aspect. But also had some niece and nephews that I just adore, and was able to pick up those kinds of moments that I had free to go with them or bring them with me or travel. And so, that it was a lot of fun doing that. But my husband had two sons who I've had the opportunity to help be in their life for a long time, and it's been nice.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's been good. So it ends up well, but I didn't do a great job because I'm on the road and it's very hard to connect.
Yeah.
But when I came back home, I did connect
Oh, good. You were
with
able
my
to
husband and my dogs.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so,
Both important.
hey, look, it was important.
Yeah,
It was important. So
definitely. So as we kind of wrap up here, do you have any kind of closing advice or words you'd like to say to our audience or any young girls that are watching you now?
I do. I think the one thing that I could tell you is that when you're in business, it's not emotion. And we have a hard time separating the emotional part, the personal part, taking something personal. It's not. It's business. And if you have that goal that I talked about where you're going to say, I want to go to college, that's not a goal.
Right.
You know, you have your goal is one day I want to own a company where I develop code to do something that's important to me. And so when you pick a college, you're now going to say, what do I need? So I need engineering. Do I need business school? Who's the best choice? The ones I want to go to. Or is it just a technical school and I think I'm going to go that way? And then when you're there, what's my major? So that's pretty easy if you have that goal.
Right.
When you get out, it's
they go
pretty
hand
easy.
in hand. Yeah.
That's right. In summers, intern or, work for whatever with those people that are going to be part of that journey with you. And always build a support system. You have to have a support system. You can't do it alone. I will tell you can't. And it's impossible because you will need somebody to pick you up every once in a while and turn you around and push you. Hopefully not push you down, but push you up.
Right.
So
In the right direction.
that's what you have to have. And I think that's important if you stay focused on that and quit worrying about who's next to you or around you or above you or who. Just keep working at it and know that there's a goal and then put your lawn chair up and climb over the wall, climb around the wall, climb under the wall.
Yeah.
At that time, you'll have to make a choice, but at least it's a choice that you're making and you're moving forward.
Yeah. Not sitting there watching the wall.
Right. It's not a spectator game.
Well, thank you so much. This was amazing to have you on, and we really appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Next week on Code Girls on Air.
There are so many times throughout my career where you're going to hit stuff where it feels like you're failing or it feels like you're not doing it right. And then particularly being a woman in a male-dominated field, it will really hit you. And if you don't have that determination to keep going, to keep striving, to really just keep pushing in those hard times and the good times, it would be easy to be like, you know what, I'm going to do a career change.